Guardian, from his tweets, and from his largely ironic view on life. So he comes and does this panel. Gareth Hughes, you may have read about him in the news today. Interesting things happening with the Green Party. So he's been a guest before, and I'm very happy to welcome him back. Eddie Hound has joined us from her curative. She runs a social media and activism campaigns, so she's going to give us her insights into how to make these social advocacy campaigns sing. And Stuart Young from Oxfam, which does amazing work throughout the world, has done amazing work in New Zealand, and is very much the core of what social activism is about. So I just ask him to come up, and we'll get underway a little bit earlier, which will give us maybe a little more time for questions at the end, and maybe a bit more time for everything. Now, I'll get you at the end to share the mic with us. And then realize that you might have. So, activism, can social media really change the world? And when we were looking at the subjects for this year, this is one I put my hand up for because I'm very much into social activism. It's an area that I'm moving more into myself. And it's interesting, as you get to a certain age, you actually have generations in which you can see how the world has changed. You can see how it has changed from when you were a child. I'm in my 50s now, and you can see the vast technological change become very apparent. And in the last, say, 10 years, the escalation of how social activism has changed has been transformed by Twitter. So this was one of the areas that we thought we should explore. And I think for many of us, we will have seen how social media has connected the world in a big way. It's made us much more aware of what is happening out there. But at the same time, what's becoming apparent, awareness does not always translate into action. So we wanted to explore tonight, social media, can it change the world? What is it going to do? Now, Toby wrote a book about the Arab Spring, so I'm just going to touch on with him why he wrote that book and his perspectives, because that Arab Spring in particular would be one of the biggest, most active, most dynamic, and ultimately maybe one of the biggest failures, I don't know, so I'll get his viewpoints on that. Gareth is very much in the political sphere, and he's been a very big component of social media. But in the political sphere, how much difference does it really make? How much change do politicians make paying attention? And is it changing the political landscape as well, as far as social activism goes? Eddie, I'm going to touch on, ask her about how her campaigns are structured, what she thinks will be viewpoints from the other side of it, which is planning social activism, planning those sort of campaigns and making them work. And Stuart, we're going to talk about a couple of campaigns that he's done, and particularly the one about ethical choice of bananas, which I think was really, from what I understand, was a very successful campaign. So we're going to kick off with that. So I'm just going to switch over, sorry, just bear with me here. Just like technical thing for the moment, as I switch over to the tool. We're at home with Dylan. Yay, got it up. So please feel free to tweet. And I might have more of who is here because this is an area in which they work, in which they're interested. Big hands up. Right, because I'm wanting lots of questions from you tonight. Now, I posted a TED talk on our Facebook page, which actually spoke directly to this issue. Did anyone read it or watch it? Now, it was a woman whose name I cannot pronounce, and I think it's Zainab Tufikul. And she did some research around this area. So, her conclusion was that technology empowers, sorry my age, the glasses. Technology empowers social movements, but can also paradoxically help weaken them. And I think this has become quite apparent. So, first of all, I'm going to let each of our panel answer that question. Is this true? Do they think it's true? What do they think of that viewpoint? And I might just move around a bit more so I'm not favour, and just move their heels. Like rearrangement of the awesome, so I can see your numbers. So, yeah, okay, so we'll keep looking at that. Do you think that's a valid viewpoint? That technology has empowered social movements, but also paradoxically has helped weaken them?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think
Please, don't do that.
honestly, probably won't.
Someone has had an unfortunate incident with
The power of social media to address the pressing issues in the world. It's still an eye for. I think that certainly since the Arab Spring and the Iranian Revolution and what happened in various other places in Europe, there was a swing a long way to say that social media was somehow a catalytic thing that made this massive difference, that was a panacea or a silver bullet. And it swung much too far in one direction. The revolution started being named after the media. The Twitter revolution was called in Iran by many. And then it sort of swung back the other way, probably embodied best by the Malcolm Gladwell article that appeared in the New Yorker that got lots of pickup, in which it was decided that it was all nonsense and that we were weak links and it was a load of superficial claptrap. And I suppose, as in all things, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And my view generally is that it's daft to think that any medium, whether it's the telephone or postal service or whatever, is kind of intrinsically responsible for affecting that change. At the same time, it can be central to it, even integral, and I think parts of the Arab Spring and various others have illustrated that. And to flip it on its head in terms of campaigning, rather than, obviously, the only thing sillier than imagining that Facebook and Twitter or Instagram or whatever can affect a big change will be trying to affect a big change without using those media.
I guess I can really look at what you're saying, Toby. I think she's got a dynamite. Dynamite.
I don't think girls have dynamite.
I also only have one name, which is on that horse picture. But anyway, I completely agree with your point. I think that social media can trivialise some really big, complex issues. We boil them down to sound bites. But sometimes that's enough for us to get interested and to put support behind things. There have been some catastrophic failures with social media. I think Coney was a key point where we all kind of jumped on board immediately and hadn't done our research and understood what the issues were or who the organisation was that was driving it. But then there have been some extraordinary successes like the Art Bucket Challenge, which raised millions of dollars and seen hundreds and thousands of people participate and learn about a disease that probably none of us knew about before. So it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
And that's what I think we should discuss, because there's some interesting aspects about that one. So we'll just fight a little bit and I think we'll come back to that.
Well, can I just first say kia ora and kia koutou, kia ora, it's great to be back at SMCAKL. On that question, I think it's pretty clear, social media is changing the world, it's real, it's powerful, we've got to acknowledge it's got its limitations. It's here to stay, and look, I've been someone who's been campaigning for progressive cause and worked for Greenpeace for a number of years. Real change comes from good old-fashioned campaigning.
Yeah.
And there's no shortcuts with social media, but it's a tool in the toolbox which you'd be mad to ignore. And the fact is that there have been issues such as, say, Ferguson or #TradeMartin, which I probably wouldn't have been aware of in New Zealand. We've seen successes like the Stop Pipper and Stop Soper campaigns around internet legislation in the States and copyright law. I think there was a clear victory for the internet. There were 7,000 websites, including the Greens, going black. 7 million emails sent to congressmen in the States. Incredibly powerful. But it's fleeting, I think, as well. Last year, people were hashtagging Bring Back Our Girls. This year, they were hashtagging Do Sweet Charlie. And most people are still playing hashtag Name My Sex Life with a band. So I think it's got a role it's a tool in the toolbox, but good old-fashioned campaign is going to change the way it happened when it came to the Springbok tours, or civil rights in America, or suffrage in New Zealand.
Yes, that was my part as well, that it's part of the ecosystem, but it won't achieve change by itself. You have to have all sorts of other things in place, like Oxfam starts with some hard basic research. We produce big research reports, and that gives our campaigning weight. And then there's media attention, our network of supporters, coalitions and networks of like-minded organisations. There's the actions that supporters can take, online petitions, or contacting targets directly. For example, in our Behind the Brands campaign, Behind the Brands is a hashtag, have a look, and in that we produced a scorecard of ranking the top 10 food and beverage companies on their various ethical and social and environmental factors, and then we've had 700,000 people have taken action on Behind the Brands, and lots of thousands of people have contacted the decision makers by posting on their Facebook wall or phoning their customer support lines. And I think the final part in the campaign toolbox is what we call advocacy, and that's when we have we request a direct meeting with the target, whether that's a company or a politician, and we just face-to-face ask them to make changes to their practices. And so it's a sort of a carrot and stick approach where we politely ask them to make changes, but we back that up with consumer pressure.
Do you mean you ask them on social media, or you ask them?
No, in person, and it would be an ongoing negotiation where they might say, oh, we can't do this because, and then we would come back and say, well, have you thought about this?
Well, that's quite an interesting point, because how much pressure do you think they feel if there's a trending hashtag? I mean, it's hard to tell internationally, but locally, if we're talking about, I won't name chains, but do you think they feel any pressure if there's a trending, we won't do, okay.
Yeah,
I did not say that, you know what I mean?
I think the target of the campaign feeling pressure is an integral part of it. So, for example, in the Dole Bananas campaign that you mentioned, so this was 2012 when we got Dole to remove the ethical choice label from their bananas. And so, again, we started off with some research that we carried out in the Philippines, and then we managed to get some media attention on the day, and we released some shared graphics onto Facebook, which were our biggest shared content on Facebook ever, and we got on talk radio, and it became the trending topic for the day. And within 8 hours, Dole backed down and announced that they would remove their ethical choice labels.
Well, that's really interesting, because if we pass that along to Europe on a political level, and this is really interesting, you can talk from the opposition party viewpoint, but do you have any insight how much pressure a government in power feels? Are they even aware of hashtags? Is it something they're cognizant of? Because the both opposition parties are becoming very, or not both, all of it, but opposition parties are becoming very active on social media. Maybe ACT not so much, but definitely the Green Party and Labour.
Yeah, I agree. I think that pressure's genuinely there. When you look across, the 121 MPs in Parliament, the vast majority of them have Twitter. Many of them don't use it every day, but they feel pressured to be on Twitter. It's de jure. There's an old axiom in politics that a politician will go straight to the letters to the editor page of a newspaper to see what the people are thinking. And it's the same thing with their Twitter accounts or their Facebook wall. This is how people in 2015 engage with their politicians. 50 years ago it was radio, 40 years ago TV, and today it's online.
And Eddie, when you're designing a campaign, how much thought do you give to that? To designing a hashtag, do you give any thought, you must have this as your hashtag or have an active campaign going on?
Yeah, I don't think the hashtag is the central point to any campaign that we ever run. What we're always thinking about is who's the audience that we are wanting to reach, and what sort of messages do we need to be sharing with them to create that kind of change, or to create a conversation that might eventually affect that sort of change. Hashtags are a really good way of aggregating all of that conversation together and perhaps giving it more reach or extension, but we certainly don't start with a hashtag and then hope that that's going to spread. There's kind of a building block of other things, like Stuart's mentioned, that you have to put together. The research has to be there. You have to know who you're talking to. You need to know what you want them to do. You have to have the message, the hook, the shareable content, the hashtag. In some instances comes last.
But if we come back to, I'll just throwing here, because if we come back to a journalistic point of view, that is a hashtag is a hook nonetheless. You're not really interested in someone's campaign, you're going to be interested in a highly trending hashtag, like just retailing.
Maybe. I mean, it certainly becomes a phenomenon at that point, but I don't think there are many people that attach a huge amount of kind of value per se to the hashtag. I mean, in a strange way, it makes me think when you talk about the idea of coming up with a hashtag first, for example, would seem to be an invitation for the sabotage or hijacking of that. And I don't know if Oxfam have done that before, but it's certainly one of the most powerful kind of tools in an activist way is to pick up a hashtag from a corporate that is in some way distasteful to a large number of people, and to pick it up and then fling it back in the face of the originator.
Now, it has been done, I can't from this point I can't think of any, but can anyone think of any examples where that's happened?
Shell.
Shell.
There was a Shell Arctic one, right?
But that wasn't Shell itself, that was a Green Peace one, wasn't it?
Shell first.
Yeah.
I've got another fantastic example, which is my NYPD. So NYPD wanted people to post photos of friendly policemen and people interacting with them. And so people did post pictures of them interacting with policemen, but it was people being arrested and police brutality and people being pulled off protests and stuff. And it was one of the examples of how hashtags are a fantastic source of creativity, and it's a great one. My NYPD.
Well, we've seen it in our parliament. So it was a meme that we took over. So John Key a couple of years ago used to always go on about Planet Labour and Planet Green. So we created a hashtag and ran with it called Planet Key. And we ended up asking John Key in Parliament, what's it like on Planet Key? And he said, well, there are no toilets, I can tell you that, a lot of golf courses. And then people ran wild with their own visions of what Planet Key
But I think that if I recall correctly, one would be nice to credit the Greens with all of that, and that was some of the debate that was happening in parliamentary question time. But I think that happened reasonably organically. It was just a funny thing, and so it picked up. And the best hashtags are the best. I mean, the most fun to be had on Twitter is when it happens organically. It just springs up rather than, I think this is dying. Saying, it says here, dead battery. I've killed this microphone already. I can project.
Just a description from Europe.
That's all I have to say.
I think that's a good point though about the organic nature of hashtags. I think Ride With Me was one that popped up around the Sydney siege.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a campaign, that wasn't somebody that had invented it, that was somebody's real story. And it was a story about how we actually unite around this, rather than use this to be, racist and antagonistic towards one another. We can actually come together, and it spread virally. It's that magic marketing word that
And that's
it has to be genuine.
And it's really interesting. I don't know, maybe this is for a moment, because that is why it works. There's something maybe that points to the intrinsic humanity of people that they use these hashtags as a way of making change. And what is your perception about why hashtags have become a thing? I mean, really, it's a relatively new manifestation. Why?
They allow you to easily become part of a conversation and easily learn about a subject matter that you might be interested in, or easily participate in a fun game on Twitter or whatever it might be. It's become a way that we gather content.
Well, we're seeing it in business, Uber's changing the taxi driver industry, we're seeing it in the energy markets. It's this sort of crowdsourcing ability, and this is what it's brought to social campaigning.
That's from the other side, the crowdsourcing, but from the human side. Why do you think we respond to something like that? Is it wanting to be part of the herd?
It's about being part of a collective, doing something. Obviously, I think you could say it's people doing it because they want to make a difference. Other people, you could say, are they doing it because they want to be seen to be making a difference. But it's sharing that experience, and instead of a campaign just coming out of headquarters and going downwards, you can actually see genuine bottom-up campaigns where everyone gets a say and people can engage, and when you unleash people's creativity and passion, amazing things can happen.
And with Stuart, the Oxfam, so you've obviously spent quite a few years, so how have you seen that evolve in that, from the way you used to run campaigns, obviously? Has this made a great deal of difference for you to be able to galvanise support around issues?
Not especially, no. It's been a gradual evolution, getting more and more online, I would say.
So, is it a real part of your strategy though? I mean, have you had any hashtags about using the dog? Do you track it? Is it something that you look at? That it runs?
No, I think we'd be uncomfortable with making a hashtag a central part of a strategy. We do use them. So our inequality campaign, which has been in the media a lot recently, uses "Even It Up" as the title of the campaign. So "Even It Up" is the hashtag, and there's a lot of great content on that. You go and look at back on Valentine's Day, there's some great posts using "Even It Up." And so yeah, it tends to be the title of the campaign, and it's not really, as you say, organic hashtags are more authentic, and it's really unnatural to invent one. So we tend to try not to do that.
I've been tweeting about cricket a lot lately, and I've been using the hashtag not because I want people to look at it, but because I'm conscious that lots of people don't need any more tweets about the cricket, and so they can filter it out, which is one of the best functions of the hashtag filter.
So let's now just go in a bit of depth and look at a few campaigns, just as some case studies to see what's worked, what hasn't. So shout out any campaign that you think actually, a social activism campaign that you think actually achieved a result. Anybody?
The ALS campaign?
Which one?
The ice bucket.
The ice bucket. So let's look at the ice bucket challenge. We'll do a bit of case study with them there. So that evolved quite small, didn't it? So if we look at it from a journalist perspective, it got a lot of media coverage. So what was so appealing about that challenge?
I think what was appealing about it was that there were videos of people having ice tipped over their heads.
And not just people, the magic people, celebrities.
But I mean, that worked. The crucial thing about that is that it was a fundraising campaign, I think. I mean, it raised some awareness of the sense. But I reckon if you went out and walked through the park over there, everyone would know the ice bucket challenge, and I reckon 1 in 10 would be able to tell you what it was about. But who cares? It raised lots of money as well. That's a powerful, important thing.
But you should care, because if you're raising money for a particular disease or a particular cause, you want people to know about the cause. So people know the ice bucket challenge, but they may not know what it was for. So once that money is gone, how do you do it again?
It's still 1 in 5, isn't it? So it's not a totally made up statistic, but I think it was definitely a success. Yes. I mean, the other one that occurred to me when you asked that question is I think the hashtag was Free AJ Staff, but the Al Jazeera campaign, which was driven out of Doha and worked as a way of kind of feeding and disseminating the information about the 3 journalists that were still imprisoned in Cairo. One of whom is Peter Grisco's back in Australia now, the other 2 are out in bail in Cairo. That really worked, and it wasn't kind of superficial, and it fed out through other media and just kept. People who are involved in that will say that really worked because it kept it in the public mind.
Yeah.
So it's very easy. There are lots of people imprisoned in unjustified ways around the world, but this one remained in view because of that campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a massive media organisation.
That's right.
As well.
Yeah.
So you were looking at this from the ALS, so what are your thoughts on it as far as a campaign that a social advocacy campaign would go?
Well, there's no doubt that internationally it was a fantastic fundraising. It raised, the numbers here, $70 million in 1 month alone, when normally they only raise $2.5 I don't know that that translated as well down here in New Zealand, and I can't really tell you the reason why. Perhaps it was that not so many celebrities got involved in writing. But I think you're right. Perhaps the piece that was missing in that campaign was that ALS. I can't even pronounce what that acronym stands for, and I can't tell you a lot about it.
It's not a neuron disease, basically.
And so perhaps there was an opportunity missed to educate people along the way. But people got involved. They had a lot of fun, and a lot of money was raised, and perhaps that money will be invested now in education as well as research, as well as healthcare, as well as.
I just want to put a denim here, because the interesting thing about motor neuron disease is it's relatively rare. It's always fatal, apart from Stephen Hawking, and it's a very small. It's an orphan disease, so it's a very small proportion of the population. And one of the criticisms I would see of that campaign was, well, why? I mean, 1 in 200, or I think the statistics, 1 in 225,000, these aren't exact, so I can't people will get that. It's very rare. Why all this attention on one small disease when there are so many other deserving causes? And it was interesting, the dynamic is like, well, why not? Why? So, I'll just jump into Gareth, but that's an interesting kind of viewpoint on
Well,
it.
why? Because it was a genius concept, and I'm sure there are people in this room who would love to come up with the ice bucket challenge for 2015 for their client or the charity they work for. I'm sure Oxfam would love to pull it off. But I guess, what did it have going for it? It was fun. You got a bit messy, you got to have fun with your friends, but it was kind of like a chain letter as well. You passed it on. It's that old sort of, I'm sure there were massive chain letter fundraising campaigns 100 years ago. It's that old take, just using modern technology to move around the world in a matter
It's
of
the one
hours.
where you challenge people to do some kind of appalling drinking excessive thing. It's actually pretty close in genre terms to that. It's just that one didn't have any charity attention. Maybe that's one for Oxfam.
Yeah. Is that maybe why it was successful? Because it actually did flip, because there had been a lot of those campaigns around. Was it flipping it on its head, instead of I challenge someone to drink, 5 bottles of alcohol and get drunk and they pass out? Or what was it, choking one for a little while?
What did,
50 shades of...
didn't no makeup selfies come first before Ice Bucket Challenge?
Yeah,
So
and that's an interesting
no
one as
makeup
well.
selfies raised £9 million for Cancer Research UK, and just like you're talking, I reckon it's the challenging your friends, tagging them in the post, chain letter aspect of it, which was the reason for the success of both campaigns.
And that raises another interesting issue, is this a consequence of the society as it is now? So why do we do these things? Why do we not just give the money straight to the charity? Why is it still that narcissism, like you said, the rise of smartphones, rise of filming ourselves? Are we just actually using narcissism as a way to raise money through charity? Charity is a way to raise money through narcissism, because we can then film ourselves with no makeup, film ourselves doing this challenge.
I'm not sure if narcissism is quite the right word, but there is something about building our own identities, and on the online social media world allows us to do that. And in some ways it allows us to create the ideal version of ourselves. And how fantastic is it that the ideal version of ourselves often includes badging ourselves with causes and a commitment to creating change. That's fantastic. What we want to do though is make sure that it doesn't just stop by badging yourself online with those causes. We want to make sure that it's carrying through to real action on the ground. All of us would like that.
Yeah. So let's now then look, Sasha, what's the campaign you think didn't work, went horribly wrong, was just awful? And I suppose we go back to the Coney one, would be, how did that arise? Why did no one look at it? What do you think? Let's have your thoughts on that one. Because it was gangbusters to start with, and it got a lot of media.
So, yeah, it's hilarious. It ended with Jason What's-His-Face walking naked through traffic. It was, it's become the kind of touchstone for the appalling social media campaign, because for all sorts of reasons that have been rehearsed in the right, in terms of the fact that it simplified madly the idea that I mean, Coney wasn't even Uganda. It put it down to this kind of one idea of this terrible villain rather than being a complex problem, all sorts of things. And yet, I don't know. I mean, I suppose the question is, would that problem have been better or worse without it? And then there's that, so that's one side of it. I mean, I wrote a couple of pieces about it for the listener. I wouldn't have, most of them were surveying the attitudes to it, which were interesting. I did a few follow-up pieces on what has happened to Cody. I don't think...
What has happened?
Not a great deal.
Yeah.
I mean, but there have been, the Americans did lift their effort, arguably, slightly. In a way, the Boko Haram thing is a more interesting recent example. But in terms of Coney, I suppose if that's the worst, I mean, the other side of it, I guess, is there's been studies done, but the extent to which someone clicking, what was it, Get Coney, or what was whether or not that makes you a less useful agent in terms of change than not doing it. And I think, in a way, the idea that if you do something lazy, slacktivist on Facebook, the idea that you were otherwise going to embark on this massive kind of social change project is unlikely. Otherwise you're probably going to watch Friends on TV.
Yeah, I mean, Coney was the example I referenced before, and I think we all just start to think about it, and that's probably the piece that makes it feel a little bit of a failure or a bit tricked when it's sucked in. But at the same time, we all have conversations about it, and have something that we weren't going to talk about around the dinner table became a subject that was there was an easy entry point, and we certainly all raised awareness. But it's not only social media that does that sort of thing. Movies do that, journalism does that, parties, events, all sorts of things do that.
Well, then let's look at 50 Shades of Grey. That's a really interesting phenomenon, and it is very galvanising. And this was one of the examples quite recently was in New Zealand social media of people reacting to it. So you hear what is it? It is a movie, and it was a book. So now there's this split, this polarisation. There's this woman, people who love it, think it's a great thing. There's a woman, and many people who hate it, who think it's abusive, who thinks it's glorifying abusive relationships. And there's a BDSM community who doesn't like it because they're saying that's not what we're about. So if you're looking, is it a good way? Would you use something like this? Would you report on something like this? Would this be something that you would use to raise attention to a cause? Would you use it if you work for Women's Refuge? Would you use it if you work for BDSM Inc.? How would you use something like this in a social media campaign? Because it is high profile. So, for example, if you were working for Women's Refuge, well, how would you use something like this?
I don't think I could use it, no.
Why not? It's incredibly high profile.
Just, you've got to be real and authentic, and you can't just jump onto bandwagons because people will see through you.
What about if it was about like Governor Grey or some, and there was some play you could do on it that ended up being, I mean, it's not completely outside the bounds of possibility that you could take such an idea and flip it or play with it, is it?
I mean, one problem that Oxfam's got is that we're very under-resourced, and although we'd love to spend our day coming up with creative shared graphics, it's like we've got heaps of other stuff to do. Typically what we do in New Zealand is we steal content off Oxfams around the world, and they come up with the creative ideas.
So, from a political point of view, you are an MP, someone comes to you, says this is an abusive movie, you should get it banned, something like that. What would you do? How would you process it?
Pass it on to the other portfolio holder, which is me, thank God. People do come to us, and this has been the amazing thing about 50 Shades of Grey. I haven't read the book, I don't really want to see the movie, but I've seen the diverse views on my Facebook wall. And there's some pretty strong, strident views on both sides, which is good. And I guess what I use Twitter for as a politician is to engage with people in real time. So, asking questions on Facebook with messages or on Twitter. Is what I try and do is have a genuine conversation with them. Do I believe in banning films? I don't think that's the type of film
No,
that should be
I
banned.
don't think it should be banned, but in a way, of creating conversations, do you think it's sort of valid use there?
Oh, it's got to be definitely valid use. I think most people know what it is, but I think other people are more informed about the cultural context that it operates in because they've seen an article or discussed it on a Facebook message. And you've given me the idea, though, maybe 50 Shades of Green is a little me wiggity
Terrifying.
I'll think of a creative bill afterwards, okay? So for you, would you see this as a way, would you jump onto it or would you not touch it?
I think it's a really risky subject to try and campaignize. I think that potentially some of those agencies should be watching those conversations from a safety point of view, and that would be an interesting entry point for them to share the services and the support that they can offer. Should it be a real and valid risk for anybody? I mean, I think the risk with something like 50 Shades of Grey is that it can trivialise a really serious issue, and those organisations are working at the very, very worst end of it. So there's a risk for them to campaignize, but there's an opportunity for them to support those who might use that as a way of seeking help.
And from a media point of view, I mean, really, is tabloid heaven. It is. The contention, the polarisation, the right, the headlines. I mean, you can guarantee a headline for anybody if you run a story around this issue.
Yes, but I suppose that presents as many dangers as it does advantages.
Yeah.
One of the functions of Twitter is that sometimes it feels as though there are 100,000 people who get up in the morning, get ready, take up position, and look for something to denounce. And so, if there's nothing else that day of any real consequence, then it's going to be you. So, I guess tread carefully from that point.
So let's then move on, and I want to look at one campaign which I think is an interesting one because it is who's aware of the Blackfish campaign out of the documentary? Hands up. So essentially that's about captivity, orca captivity, targeted against SeaWorld. I'm a big advocate of the Blackfish campaign. I contribute to it financially. I contribute tweets. For me, it came from the movie, so I was just kind of interested when looking at social media. What everyone's been saying is that it has to have an anchor, it has to have a goal, it has to have a plan. So for me, it's a positive case study that the documentary came first. So who's seen the Blackfish documentary here? Hands up. So just ask anybody, how much of an impact did that have on you? Did it change any the way you thought at all? Right, shout out.
Yes.
Yeah. So who after that went online to see if there was any sort of social media campaign around it? Well, I did, which is how I found all the Blackfish. So if you go to my Twitter feed, you'll see I followed a lot of people involved in that campaign. So that's what I just want to touch on briefly. This is a campaign I think works, and maybe your thoughts around it. And that it was a documentary first. It was about a really contentious issue about captivity of orca. Then got people on board. There's a fundamental campaign, a fundamental driver, and then out of that you've got social advocacy. So just thoughts around how you think it works as a campaign. Is that a good model for a campaign? Is this how it should work? Pick up with Gareth. If someone had seen it, are you aware of it?
I've heard of the movie. I haven't seen it personally. Wasn't really familiar with the campaign around it, but having run numerous campaigns over the years, if no one knows what your issue is, why start trying? You need to have an education phase to inform people what it is, and for all Coney's faults, that's how they started as well with this film, and the viewership numbers were staggeringly high. How many people they got to watch that film? So, getting the information out there, and hopefully you've got such a compelling case and easy tools that people can act. That's the way to do it. But I guess just asking people to send a tweet isn't enough. What I like to think is if you're engaging people online, you want to take them on a social media journey and you want to sort of rank them up, different levels of activity.
Okay, you jump in. Stop it. Stop it. Just ignore them. They're on Twitter. They don't matter.
No, it's quite fun. I think it would be a pretty boring world if there was one way of doing a campaign.
Yeah.
So I think you can learn a lot from all the different ways that people have done different things. You can learn a lot from Coney, you can learn a lot from Blackfish, you can learn a lot from Arab Spring, you can learn a lot from all of these things. But if you were trying to replicate all of them over and over again, I think you'd lose audience really quickly. The nature of social media and creativity is that we're always hungry for something new, something different, something that surprises us, something that delights us, something that is fun, something that we can participate in. So there isn't one way of doing it.
So I'm going to just, because I want to actually do more of a question and answer session, so I'm just going to spend the last 15 minutes with that. But what came out of this talk is that you have to have that ground, this woman's viewpoint was you have to have that grassroots movement, which is more in politics as well, and also with social media. That social media on its own is not enough, and that over time, what we're seeing now is that very few campaigns have worked, and without an anchor point behind or a target ahead. And I actually really would like some questions, so I hope please do contribute tonight. So have we got any questions from the panel around any of the sort of topics we've discussed, or anything that we haven't discussed? Oh, can we just grab the mic actually, just the mic?
Thank you. My name is John from AUT University in Brooklyn Institute. My question, visiting the basic proposition for tonight's event is whether or not social media can change the world or change society. I want to just visit what the Honourable Member of Parliament touched on earlier about changing the behaviour of MPs. My point is that, first of all, we don't have to wait in the democratic front. We don't have to wait for 3, 5, or 4 years in order to punish non-performing MPs. A little tweet about their character and non-performance can change their life. That is one way social media can change the world. Secondly, those multinationals who use their multi-million-dollar power and the price competitiveness to molest the society and abuse environmental sustainability, they can be held accountable with just one tweet. On the other hand, the Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott, recently described social media in general and Twitter in particular as an electronic graffiti.
Yeah.
So how do members of the panel consider that negative labeling of social media?
Oh, but I just want to grab first though, that point you made about MPs, that you, is that true? If there's negative tweets coming through, is that, do they care? Do the MPs care? I mean, how much of, yeah, do they really care, or is it just, like you say, graffiti?
I think every MP's got their own strategy to deal with it. Some block like crazy. I've never blocked anyone, surprisingly. Often I just ignore them, because there's a huge amount of trolls out there. But on the flip side, what I want to address the point is that, as an opposition MP, one of my jobs, shrank a bit, one of my jobs is to hold the government to account, so I'm oppositional. So a lot of people hear me complaining about X, Y, and Z. Whereas on social media, because I don't have to get the media as the mediator to get my message out there, I can be incredibly positive and optimistic. So that's the reverse side, which is we can actually have more positive, more solutions-based politics because of social media.
Well, if we pick that up with Toby, how quick is media now to jump on, Twitter was criticising, there were a huge number of tweets about this MP, negative, how's she going to deal with that? I mean, it has now become a reality.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, you sometimes can look at a page of a newspaper, not just in New Zealand but anywhere, and find on any page that sort of 2 out of 3 of the stories, say 4 out of 6 of the stories on a given page will have some Twitter reference in it. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's kind of lazy. And there's nothing that gets me more than the phrase, XY took to Twitter today to
Yes.
really infuriate me. But anyway, but no, I mean, my colleagues are all over Twitter now. I mean, to an extent, it's disproportionate to the importance of Twitter. But Twitter as a mechanism is, Facebook is much more important, as all you people know, for a proper reflection of what's going on. But Twitter is the way that messages come through to the mainstream media. And so if there's a Twitter storm, that's much more likely to, I'm sure you've seen this in your campaigns, that much faster that will be reflected in the mainstream media, I would say, than a similar thing on Facebook. Is that fair?
Unfortunately, we haven't seen them in our campaigns, but yes, that'd be true.
So, next question. Any more questions?
Hi, thanks for all your presentations. I had a question about the difference between a lot of the campaigns that sort of come up are great at gaining awareness for something, but there's a bit of a strategic disconnect between what needs to actually happen next. And if you're talking about change that has to happen in terms of policy at a government level, that's going to take funding, lobbying, and a lot of patience. And on Twitter, people's attention span is, a couple of weeks max, and it's gone. So the ALS campaign was successful because they gained a whole bunch of funding that could be used for quite a period of time. So if a campaign just has a hashtag to gain awareness, but no, logical next steps, how can you then sort of create real policy change for something that has to affect the public?
And I don't think we can. I think you have to have a next step. Just one other point I wanted to make about using hashtags for awareness campaigns is I question whether that's successful because the nature of it is that you're preaching to the converted, because the people that are most likely to see the tweets that contain the hashtags are followers of the hashtagists, and those followers are likely to share the same values and worldview as the hashtagists. And the people with opposing worldview that we'd like to change the hearts and minds of are unlikely to see the tweet.
Echo chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the most, I'll come into the Arab Spring, because I think that's one of the things that I do in my Twitter feed is I actually try to purposely follow other cultures, other things that I do. So I follow a lot of Arabic people, and a lot of them are now dead, so they just disappeared. Well, everyone from Syria just disappeared. So the problem I find out is you have these devastating hashtags, people basically begging for their lives, these to cat videos and all that other rubbish. So do you think this is actually in some way just another way that we all get desensitized to the travesty that is happening in the world, especially like the Arab Spring? I mean, it's the same thing. People begging for their lives, people being killed, gassed, imprisoned, and it's still happening. And if you don't follow those people, you do not see this happening. But if you do follow them, then the next thing will be up is Kim Kardashian, big butt, or something equally annoying. So just all your thoughts on that, just in a way to finish off the panel.
Just like one thing on that. That's true. I mean, that's the nature of the self-selecting environment that you create in social media, I guess. There is one interesting counterpoint to that, which is that there's something which is called the QCAT theory of international diplomacy, or something like that. And the theory goes that the reason that it's really important for international movements, protest movements, activists, opposition movements, to use established networks is that if they're being used, if they're Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, if they're being used to share cats, to share lolcats, then it's not so easy for governments to shut them down. So if you create a bespoke network for protest, which they tried to do in some of the occupation movements or whatever, it's pretty easy to do. And as you see in places like Turkey or Egypt and numerous others around the world, it's much harder and more noticeable if you shut down a network that is being used for quotidian, trivial purposes, as well as those kind of political, insurrectional movements.
Now that's really, really good. You do not shut down the cats, whatever you do, that there will be a revolution. Yeah, so, with your campaigns, then how do you get How do you make sure that they're not trivialised?
I think probably the thing that we do is we're actually not trying to have mass conversations with lots and lots and lots of people. I think an example of work that we're doing at the moment is reducing drug-related driving harm in ages 17 to 24, so boys who drive while high. And so we're not trying to have a conversation with all of you guys that are in the room. We're trying to talk directly to those people. And it's a bloody hard conversation to have, and it's going to take a really long time. And we're very slowly changing attitudes, perceptions, and getting more and more young people saying the things that we want them to be saying, and changing their behaviour. So what we're doing is we're being very specific and deliberate in our messages. We're being very specific and deliberate in who we're sharing those messages with. We're being very specific and deliberate in the ways in which we're encouraging them to interact with us and the behaviour that we want, the behaviour change that we want to create. We're also aware that we're only one cog in a big wheel of things that are going to happen to help create that change. Social media alone is not going to change an issue like people believing that it's okay to drive high. Policy has to change, regulation has to change, support for people who perhaps are addicted to substances needs to change. And so I think to your point, it's being aware that you're only one piece of the pie, and focusing on yeah, it's a very big pie.
And within the political sphere, I mean, it's the same thing. How do you get people galvanised around issues like housing, the housing sell-off, in the same problem, you know? Oh yeah, I don't want, oh yeah.
Yeah, you're right. There's an awful lot of distractions out there, but a lot of really important issues as well. I think it's the same with, say, political change or social change, or even if you're trying to build a brand. It's easy to launch. It's easy to have one idea. But if you're going to actually make change, you've actually got to have a follow-through plan, and it's hard graft. That's what I was kind of referring to, that good old-fashioned campaign. A piece which I read many years ago, which has really stuck with me, is called the Movement Action Plan. And that says how it's so easy to launch, and everyone pays you attention for a day, and you feel great. But then you don't know where to go to next, so you launch something else, and you go on the circle. What you've got to do is have a plan to follow through it. It's the same in politics or social change campaigns.
And for us, I mean, it's like, are there times where you think, why do we roll? Or how do you keep moving forward in the face of almost sometimes overwhelming odds and all this distraction?
We're so busy doing lots of interesting stuff that it's quite easy to not get down and just yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So one last question, and then we'll be
How do hashtags come about? Who creates hashtags in the company and the organization? It's a simple question. How do they come into being? That's an interesting question. I always wondered what makes a hashtag a trending topic, or who creates the hashtag? Is someone assigned for that, or just a simple question? How do they come about it?
Yeah, we have a yes.
It's one to think about, no?
As I said, we don't really do a huge amount with them because I think they have to be, genuine and they're bottom up and all that. But yeah, you can keep promoting them, and that's a lot of work. So one example of that is OTWNZ, which is the hashtag that we ask participants and supporters in the Oxfam Trail Walk, our 100-kilometre sponsored walk, to use. And that's something we've been promoting for 5 years, and it's a lot of work, and you have to keep hammering the message in to get people to use it. But it is a fantastic hashtag for the participants at the event to share with each other their experiences and develop a community. But yeah, it's taken a lot of promotion by us to encourage it to use.
Sorry, I think we've got one last question.
So the kind of does the hashtag stuff really matter unless it's picked up by mainstream media? I think one of the comments tweets that came through is that more people using trade me than anything else, so should we try selling ideas rather than hashtagging?
Joey?
Well, I
Yes,
guess,
definitely it does.
of course it does. And, the newspaper as an idea, there are now, various newspapers in the world don't even have editors, they have content managers, so it's all content, isn't it? Whether it's on, there are lots of people that post material on Facebook directly rather than via so no, of course that's an outdated view of it. It could be a powerful, important, substantial thing without appearing in the pages of the newspaper.
So we're going to wrap up there. We're very mindful of keeping to time. And just to close, I'm very much a social advocate, and I think this is a very important conversation for us all to have, because what we've seen is that many people do want to create real change in this world. This has given us a platform, a way to do it. And if you are wanting to do that, if you do give hashtags, then take that next step, and that next step will be to help the organisation, the cause, in a material way. Tonight, I would recommend while we're trending, you hashtag your cause. Just put it out there and say, I'm at SMCAKL and I support this. And then maybe think a little bit further ahead. It's like, if I want to support this cause, how do I take that next step? Now, I just got more. Did you want to?
I must well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can
I've just got something quick to say about the
Okay.
next one, but before it does, I just want to thank everybody so much for coming tonight. It was a beautiful evening. I think we still have one and there left, so please stay on to network. We are a volunteer organisation, so please can you just pick up all the stuff that you have on the floor and just take it out to the recycle bins. Got a social activism there. And Paul's going to just have a quick word about the next one, but firstly, can we give the panel a really big hand?
And thanks so much, Adrian, for wrangling tonight. Going forward, oh God, I can't believe I said going forward. Shit. Buzzword. In the future, if you want to have a go at running one of these, we've made it really, really easy. The whole thing is tightly formatted. If you've got a great idea for an event, probably next year, because we've got this year locked down pretty well, just come and see one of us and we'll make it happen. Next month, which conveniently is also the 18th of the month, Wednesday, I'm running the event, my turn, and it's about the Internet of Things. The reason I chose that is one day I woke up and I realised that I had more emails from the doors in my house than I had from people. I've got my doors set up to email me when they open and close. I thought, this is kind of weird. This is worthy of a topic. So we've got 3 awesome, it's true, I'll show you the screenshot. It's very weird. They don't say much. They sort of open and close.
I say, I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. This is a Stanley Kubrick dystopian future we're living in. We've got panelists who are going to talk about everything from how to connect a city to make it smart, right down to the things that you wear on your body, and just come along and you could win the latest Fitbit. So that's this time in a month. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much. Clean up your bastards. Good night.